Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. This is my first video. I'll be doing a brief history of almost all the consoles I own. I say that because I'm not including the Atari 2600 because I'd rather do a video just about it. Because keeping it brief is what we're doing here. And keeping it brief for the Atari 2600 means keeping it very boring. So, start with the NES. This is the NES Classic, released in 2015. 30 of the greatest games on the NES. Great way to get into the NES, by the way. Super reliable. Unlike the regular NES, which is very unreliable because of the... It doesn't have a straight load like other cartridge systems, which you'll see in a moment. It has sort of like a VCR design where you have to put the cartridge in, and then push it down, and that mechanism gets very, very worn out over time, so they don't work very well. But the NES came out in 1983 as the Famicom in Japan, came out in 85, 86 everywhere else, and was one of the most successful consoles ever. Not so much in Europe, but everywhere else, pretty successful. And what Nintendo did with it really saved gaming in America. It was a dead market. I'm going to do a video on the game crash from 1983, but it was pretty dead in America, and Nintendo came in and saved it. So I recommend the NES Classic for getting into the NES because it's pretty reliable. Well, I mean, it's very reliable, it's just a motherboard. But moving on from the NES, we have the Sega Genesis, which came out in 1988 in Japan and 1989 everywhere else. It's called Mega Drive everywhere but America, but I prefer the name Genesis, so what are you going to do? But Genesis really proved that anybody could theoretically make money in the video game market because previously everyone thought it was just Nintendo. But Sega really came in with the Genesis and really proved that anyone could make a game console be successful if they did it right, which Genesis did. Sega's most successful home console had two very infamous add-ons, the Sega CD and Sega 32X. And Genesis really had great games. So did the SNES, which is coming up next. The two of them really had just great games, because that's all they had. SNES here. This is the Classic Edition again, came out in 2017. This is again what I'd recommend, because it's about the same price as an SNES, and the games are super expensive for that. But the SNES and the Genesis battle was the best console war in history for most people, and it's kind of hard to disagree, because I mean the two of them just making great game after great game after great game all the time. Two of them really went at one another and attacked them almost in their marketing. SNES beat the Genesis technologically in almost every respect, except for the CPU clock speed. The Genesis had slightly faster, but SNES Genesis era. Both great systems, highly recommend them. The Genesis is pretty cheap for the hardware. The SNES is not, but the SNES Classic you could probably still find before they discontinue it. Moving on, we have the PlayStation, which really took Sega's policy of anyone can make a video game console and have it be successful. PlayStation did that mainly because the other two mucked up so much, Sega and Nintendo. The N64 was great and everything, but it didn't please developers at all. PlayStation did, because it was cheap, easy to program for, and used CDs. See? And that was good for developers because it meant that people would buy them, it was easy to develop for them, cheap for them to develop for because cartridges were expensive. PlayStation has so many great games as well, though, and that's why the PlayStation Classic over here is such a disappointment to most people, because it doesn't have most of those great games, which is kind of disappointing considering the SNES and NES Classic have such great games, but... And again, Sony doesn't own the games. Nintendo and Sega own their games because they made them, but Sony is just the hardware manufacturer. They don't own the games that they make, that their third parties make. So, it's unfortunate, but it's how it has to be. Anyway, moving on. We have one of history's most underrated systems ever, the Sega Dreamcast. This is just such a great system. In all areas, this thing is amazing. Like, I recommend this thing so much. There's so many great games on it, and it really is unfortunate how it didn't get a chance. It never got a chance because of, well, mostly the PlayStation 2, but also Sega's horrible past. The 32X and the Sega Saturn, they really burnt customers off, and then the Sega Dreamcast almost didn't have a chance, really. And it's unfortunate because it's amazing. Like, it's such a great system and it never got the chance to actually prove anything. It came out in 1999 in everywhere except Japan, where it came out in 1998, November. September 9th, 1999. 20th birthday this year. So, Dreamcast had best launch of all time. Like, so hyped up. Everything was just advertising as well as you could, really. Like, Dreamcast's main problem was basically Sega just ran out of money. They were on the verge of bankruptcy by 2001 when the Dreamcast was discontinued. But that was mainly the fault of this guy, the PlayStation 2, coming in and taking any chance that anything in the 6th generation had away from being successful. Like, there was no chance after this thing came out. The GameCube came out and the Xbox came out, and they sold decently, but nothing came close to the PS2. PS2 is the most successful console of all time. I'm sure most of you probably played this thing at some point. This is my first console. It means a lot to me because of that. Not this one, though. This is the 4th one I have, and this is the 3rd one I got. First 2 broke long ago. But the PlayStation 2, amazing games. But not originally. They spent the first year basically without any killer titles. So that's basically why the Dreamcast was allowed to exist until 2001, because Sony had a launch with great titles. Love the Dreamcast, but it would have fallen under much faster. But the PlayStation 2 really came out and just eventually had really great games on it, and it's a great system to pick up today for retro games. It's super affordable because just how common they are. Although most people say get the Slim because it's more reliable. I mean, either or. It's really, choose whatever you want. Whichever one suits you better. I kind of like the design of this one a bit better, but I have the space for it, so. The Slim one here, much smaller design, like incredibly compact design for the PlayStation 2 Slim. But the Xbox came out, and it came second place in the 6th generation, but the other system that came out was this, the Nintendo GameCube. This is the most recent addition to my collection so far, and it's hard to describe the GameCube because it doesn't make a lot of sense, like technically, because I don't think Nintendo wanted to move on from the N64, but they had to, otherwise they'd be even more dead in the water than they were with the N64. But they used these miniature DVDs, they made it a purple system at launch, has a handle on it. It kind of gave the idea that it was a kid's toy, which is still the problem Nintendo have today. Well, maybe not so much with the Switch, but that's what their problem was. It's what it's been for basically up until 2017. And it kind of started with this system. But the GameCube's great. The GameCube is absolutely amazing. There's so many great games on the GameCube. And Nintendo tried to fix their image. They had Resident Evil, all the Resident Evils that had been released up to that point, remade exclusively for GameCube. They had Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes, a remake of first Metal Gear Solid, and it's a really good system, but it's like the Dreamcast. It never got given the chance because, well, for basically a completely different reason, but it was never given the chance that it rightfully deserved. Next on the list, we have Microsoft's second entry into the console market, the Xbox 360. Came out in 2005, everywhere, I think, and then Slim model here got released in 2010. Xbox 360 is history's most unreliable system. It has a 52% failure rate for the original model, red ring of death, the disc scratching. But it was successful. It came last, the PS3 just beat it out in the end. But it was still successful, I don't see how that's possible. Well, I have a theory. We'll go into that in a different video. But 360, most of you probably have one of these, to be fair. And I know where I was anyway. Pretty much everyone had an Xbox 360, or a Wii, or both. So, nobody had a PS3 at a time. I don't know if anyone got a PS3 after that, but 360 was successful, despite the odds. That's probably because the PlayStation 3 had such a terrible start as well. Not in terms of failure rate, but because it was absurdly expensive at release. But here we have the PlayStation 3 anyway. Sony comes back with the PlayStation 3 and get arrogant and say, let's charge $600, which is £549 for the PlayStation 3 at launch, because everyone will buy it, because everyone loved the PS2 so much. Didn't work out, unfortunately. PlayStation 3, the most improved player of all time. Nothing has had as great a comeback as the PlayStation 3 has. There's not a single system that I can think of. You can think of one, please tell me, but this thing came back so well. Like, it was dead in 2006, 2007, and 2008 as well. 2009 they came out with the Slim model, and that's when the PS3 really started to be amazing. So people started buying them, and it's when it really became great. Like, there's so many great exclusives on the PS3. Like, you go to the 360 for multi-platform games, but the PS3 is where you would go if you wanted great exclusives that weren't Halo. And then we have the Super Slim over here with its cheap sliding door. I guess it's technically more reliable because it's less moving parts, but you know. This PS3 doesn't work, you might have seen the post on it, but the PS3, such a great story, and I can't wait to tell it in its own video, which will be coming soon. I'm not sure when. You guys can tell me which one you want to see a video on first, but the PlayStation 3 has an interesting story. It's really, really interesting to me. All that might be because I love the PlayStation 3. But anyway, after that, we have the Wii. And yes, I have 3 of them. I'm not crazy, I swear. I have a reason for having 3 Wiis. This is my first Wii. I got this on launch day in 2006, November 2006. Got this one on launch. This one no longer works, unfortunately. It stopped working in 2012 or 13, I believe. One of the two. And then I got this one, which is the Model 2. The Model 1 has backwards compatibility with the GameCube, controller ports, and memory card slots. The second model does not have this. It stripped that out and they didn't sell it with a stand, so it was intended to sit flat like that. See the logo? It's like straight down. But these are very similar. I mean, the real differences come with the Wii Mini over here, which doesn't have internet connection and just plays games and opens like this. As a top loading drive instead of a slot loading drive. But the Wii it was really successful. Like, sold more than the PlayStation 1, I think, just like by a couple million. So it was really successful, but I think in the long term it hurt Nintendo because they really marketed it more towards kids and people who weren't necessarily interested in video games. Like, they didn't market it to people like me who would be sitting here talking about consoles just because I can. I mean, I love the Wii, but most gamers don't love the Wii. Most gamers don't really like the Wii at all. And it's kind of clear to see why when you go back and look at the trailers. They really marketed it towards everyone else but gamers, which kind of fails when you're a game console. And that's why our next system, spoilers, it's the Wii U, but that's why that's had such a terrible journey throughout its life. It's the modern day Dreamcast, the Wii U. Everyone jokes about the Wii U. It's unfortunate, but it kind of deserves some of it, to be fair. I mean, Nintendo didn't do the greatest job with marketing this thing. It's kind of it's really similar to the Dreamcast and the GameCube. Nintendo didn't really know what to do with it, I think. And they tried to market it to the casuals again. But the casuals had moved on. They don't have brand loyalty like someone like me would. They don't care. They played Wii Sports and then they were done. They moved on to cell phone games. Well, mobile phone games, you know. They're not interested in the Wii U. And then gamers were interested in the Wii U because Nintendo had spent the whole last generation telling us we didn't matter. So, in the end, the Wii U ultimately tried to appeal to a market that wasn't there and appealed to no one, really. It's a shame because when you get into the Wii U, there's great exclusives on the Wii U. Like, amazing titles across the board for the Wii U. And I'm pretty sure there's only 3 sports games. That's always a win. But, yeah, the Wii U never got the chance it deserved. It's really similar to the Dreamcast and the GameCube in that respect. It came out, it didn't have a chance. especially because its hardware is so underpowered compared to the PS4 and the Xbox One, and especially the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X. I mean, it's not even funny. The PS3 processor and Xbox 360 processor are stronger than the Wii U processor, but the PS3 it just destroys the Wii U. But moving on, the PS4 is the limited edition Star Wars Battlefront one. It's very nice, but PS4 really successful because Sony went back to basically the PlayStation 1 model of make something that's cheap for consumers and easy to develop for. That's what the PS4 is, and that's what the Xbox One wasn't originally. The Xbox One launch was horrible, but I'll do that in its own video. But the PS4, really successful, really good system. Came out in 2013, November 15th, across the board, I'm pretty sure. And, I mean, there's so many great games on it, but I have two problems. One, connecting to Wi-Fi is impossible, especially where I live because it's so slow. But it's just a nightmare to connect. And two, the fans on this thing are absurdly loud. Like, I mean, it gets really loud after a while. It might just be because I've had it for 4 years and it's been used a lot, but it gets pretty loud. And finally, we have the Xbox One. Didn't start off with a great launch, but it came back, to be fair. It now has the Xbox One X, which is the most powerful console of all time. This came out November 22nd, 2013, across the board. And the launch story is interesting, but then the rest of it is kind of just similar to the PS4. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, comment, subscribe.